This week on Christian World News, religious freedom is under assault around the world. Now, some are warning that it's coming here to America. How can the church prepare?
Plus, approved and on the way, a COVID vaccine is being distributed across America, but most won't get the shot for months. How will that affect some of our most vulnerable citizens this winter?
And high-stakes battle. 2 runoff elections in Georgia will determine who rules the Senate. Why people of faith are crucial to both sides. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Faith leaders held a virtual event this week to advance religious freedom in U.S. foreign policy.
The goal is working together to secure religious freedom for everyone, everywhere, including right here in America. CBN's Ben Kennedy reports.
Religious Freedom Ambassador Sam Brownback said the concept does not work unless it's for everyone, everywhere, and all the time.
We look at this religious freedom foundational right that if you can get it right as a nation, other human rights will flourish. If you get it wrong, other human rights will diminish.
And that's what's happening as threats continue to rise across the world. New research reveals government restrictions on religion hitting the highest level since 2007. The number of countries with high or very high government restrictions peaked at 56 countries in 2018. The Middle East and North Africa region having the highest level of restrictions against people of faith.
We've never been more institutionalized, but we've never seen more persecution. The new Pew reports are out, and there's never been more persecution. So we're getting our act together and how this gets institutionalized, but obviously we've got to go to another level here as civil society, as a government.
An executive order signed in June focused on making international religious freedom a central priority for U.S. foreign policy. In 2018, the White House stepped in to help free Pastor Andrew Brunson, who was arrested in Turkey, accused of being a CIA agent plotting with Kurdish terrorists to carry out a coup. He shared his experience of being locked up in a Turkish prison for 2 years.
I tasted persecution at a relatively intense level. And I think one of the purposes God had for me in my imprisonment was that I learned perseverance at a deeper level again and again and again as I was repeatedly broken, and finally he rebuilt me.
Faith leaders are now calling on a Biden administration to keep this freedom a priority and to push back on countries that persecute people of faith. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Thank you, Ben. Pastor Andrew Brunson joins us now for more on the persecution and how to prepare. Pastor Brunson, you believe persecution is coming to this country. What are the warning signs you see?
Well, first, Jesus said that it would happen, just as the world hated him, that it will hate his followers, and we carry his scent. But as I look at our history in the States, there were, over the generations, people were faithful, and certainly we had many mistakes and sins as a country, but nevertheless, there were many who honored God, and especially leaders who did this publicly. And I think everyone can see that there's been a significant change in this area, and many leaders in our society now, corporate and the corporate world, entertainment, media, in politics, and also academia, do not honor God, and in fact, they openly defy him, and they are increasingly hostile to those who identify clearly with Jesus and his teaching. So I believe it's actually already started. We already see the signs here. There's a tidal wave on the horizon, and it's coming toward us very quickly. It's not some far-off threat.
And as individuals, corporations, as you mentioned, attempt to make God persona non grata, how will this persecution, in your opinion, manifest here in America?
So one is in silencing, marginalizing, shaming, canceling people. And I think a big issue in the future for us is going to be communication, how we get our message out to other Christians, to non-believers also. What if you're banned from social media and no one will will host your church website or your podcast? And then there's also deplatforming, I think especially of financial transactions. And just think how difficult it would be to not be able to use a credit card or to have a bank account, how that would affect you in your daily life. And it's already happening to some groups. Another thing, what happens if churches are told that unless they change their teaching from the Bible, then they will lose their tax-exempt status and be closed down? And the thing is that those who persecute will justify their persecution by saying that we are hate groups, that what we have is a hate message of intolerance, and they will justify their opposition with that. And it is very difficult to be despised and hated.
You are calling on the church to prepare and prepare now. How do we do that?
Well, this is something that's really burning on my heart, that we need to prepare, because if we're not ready, then that's very dangerous. And as far as I know, in my experience, there's only one group, I think of International House of Prayer in Kansas City, that is part of their training program, actually is preparing this generation for suffering, for persecution. So it's not something that we're really doing in the churches. So we prepare ahead of time so that when a threat comes and we are afraid, because there is fear is a real thing, we do not run, but stand firm. And I think there are several ways to do this, but the number one that I want to underline is the way we prepare to stand in difficult times is by cultivating love for God. And years ago, I began to pray what I call the Wave Starter Prayer. It's the name of the organization we just started of our ministry. And I pray this way: Father God, draw me so close to your heart that you will be able to trust me with the authority to start waves. So we began to run after the heart of God, a pursuit of intimacy. And over the years, this pursuit of God's heart prepared us for difficult assignments, including my time in prison. So God knew that I would struggle. He knew that I would break. But he also knew that because of all those years of drawing close to his heart, during the most difficult times, I would turn toward him and not away. So the truth is that intimacy fuels perseverance, and we're willing to suffer for those we love. So the thing that best prepared me for my time under persecution was cultivating that love for God and running after his heart.
Yeah, that's a very important message. And the good news is that in the midst of suffering and persecution, the church always grows, and we have seen that historically. Pastor Bronson, thank you so much for coming on the broadcast.
Thank you.
Wendy?
Wow, so powerful. Well, turning now to the coronavirus, Americans could be just days away from receiving the first doses of a vaccine that's been remarkably successful in trials.
We really want to treat this vaccine as the liquid gold that it is, because it's really the only tool that we have right now in our toolbox to cure this disease.
We can act quickly, and we intend to. We understand the urgency of the situation. We want to make sure we make the absolute best decision for the American people.
The Pfizer vaccine was found to be 95% effective with no serious side effects. The first doses will go to healthcare workers and nursing home residents, but many Americans still have questions about the vaccines, with only about half saying in a new Associated Press poll they're ready to take the shot. Pfizer says it can have about 25 million doses of the vaccine for the U.S. by the end of December.
Wendy, as you can imagine, news of the vaccine has people hoping that life might return to normal by spring, but this winter will be very different.
Yeah, especially for the homeless and the ministries that serve them. Charlene Aaron has this story on how they're adapting.
A surge in COVID cases coupled with plunging temperatures amount to greater safety measures for homeless shelters across the country. Some must limit the number of people they can help during this time when the need is even greater than usual.
We have not missed a beat, but every beat has changed. The Bowery Mission never shut down.
The Bowery Mission, a Christian shelter in New York, first opened to the city's homeless in 1879. Earlier this year, the Big Apple became ground zero in the battle against the coronavirus, forcing the Bowery Mission to change procedures.
On March 15th, we were serving meals indoors in our dining hall around tables. On March 16th, we were serving meals outdoors to go on a socially distanced line. It was an incredible adjustment.
President and CEO James Winans says the change comes just as needs have grown.
We saw double the number of people coming for meals that we were used to serving. We would often open our doors to 250 people. Now we had 500 people on the line. And these were folks who were not necessarily experiencing homelessness. These were folks who had recently lost jobs. They had no income, and they were looking for emergency food.
Further south, Union Mission Ministries in Norfolk, Virginia, also making adjustments.
The big, large community gatherings that rescue missions are known for on Thanksgiving Day had to be shuttered. We passed out tickets and with numbers, and we fed in shifts.
Reverend John Gray, who heads the Union Mission, says the ministry can only fill half its normal 400-bed capacity. to the point of even turning some away.
It was mainly people that were coming from other states, and we just encouraged them to stay where they were, to seek resources. Frankly, these were places where these were hot spots, and we just had to make the decision. It just was the most prudent thing to do.
For the Bowery, running 5 locations during the pandemic is especially difficult.
We did eventually add some spacing to our dormitories. We did a lot of cleaning.
There have been a few flare-ups.
We have had both staff and guests experience COVID, but we have not had any community spread. We are so grateful. We consider that a bit of God's miracle.
To keep cases down, residents are given daily temperature checks, and hygiene is top priority.
We have a modified van that stops in front of the Bowery Mission every day with 2 private shower units in it. People are able to get a clean set of clothes. We have hand washing stations at our locations.
As New York prepares for a resurgence of the virus, Bowery Mission stands ready to serve its city's most vulnerable.
We know at the Bowery Mission that there are thousands of New Yorkers who do not have a home, and we were not going to leave them behind.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Up next, as the U.S. Senate hangs in the balance, 2 races in Georgia will decide the outcome. Meet the faith leaders on both sides who are working to get their people to the polls.
These are times of warfare. You go into the strong tower when you're under attack.
CBN presents The Name of God, the latest teaching by Gordon Robertson.
God has given you the right to carry his name. That is life-changing.
Discover the peace, healing, provision, and protection that can be found in the Lord's name. Plus,
you're going to see some tremendous real-life stories of people who have seen firsthand what trusting in the name of God can do.
The thought of losing Noah was one of the most terrifying things I've ever walked through.
I could hear my house being shredded, and I heard my wife screaming over the phone.
I knew that God didn't lie to me. I knew that God didn't forget about me.
This is God's promise. This is the way. This is the answer. Go into that strong tower.
Get your DVD copy of The Name of God today. Call now or go to cbn.com.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30. As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
It's what starts in Israel, then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Whether it's politics, religion, or social issues, it seems Americans are more divided than ever. Now, a new digital platform called the Joshua Project hopes to help restore our country with a focus on the Old Testament. It's bringing together evangelical Christians, Catholics, and Jews to help overcome the many fractures that divide us. Dr. Karen Swallow Pryor, an author and professor at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, told CBN's Newswatch it can even help believers navigate the snares of political engagement.
What we've all seen in the past few decades, actually, is the use and really the co-opting of religious language and religious people. And politicians are going to use whatever they can use, and we have to get ourselves back grounded in the scriptures so that we understand what our place is in our true kingdom and not allow ourselves to be used by politicians on the left or the right, and to work with them as we can to advance this biblical vision for human flourishing. But certainly we need to be grounded in those scriptures ourselves first.
The platform will launch in late December with an array of content, including videos, podcasts, and more. Check in with CBNnews.com to learn more. George?
Crucial elections in the state of Georgia will determine not only who will fill 2 critical U.S. Senate seats, but also deciding the balance of power in our nation's capital. CBN's Eric Phillips traveled to Georgia. He tells why the faith vote is extremely important.
The stakes are so incredibly high, and millions are being spent on both sides to get out the vote for the January 5th runoff election. But how should Christians view it? There are differing perspectives even within the body of Christ.
It's very important because unless something changes, we're staring down the barrel of a Joe Biden presidency. I think for believers, it means everything.
I think we have to make sure that our voting is rooted in the values of the gospel.
No matter who you ask, the consensus is the Senate runoff election in Georgia is pivotal, especially for Christians. Ralph Reed heads the conservative Atlanta-based Faith and Freedom Coalition. He says Christians are called by God for such a time as this.
And he has placed us in the United States right now at this hour to be faithful witnesses to his glory and his goodness.
Reed says he wants to use the massive voting strength of evangelicals to tip the scales in favor of Republican Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue because of what's at stake if the other side wins, including Israel's sovereignty.
Massive tax increases to gut the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which protects our First Amendment right to freedom of religion. Raphael Warnock is pro-abortion. He says that abortion on demand is entirely consistent with his view as a Christian minister. I don't know how you can support an agenda that extreme.
I always fight for their right to be wrong.
Reverend Billy Honor is a faith organizer in Georgia and has been pushing voters, particularly in historically marginalized communities, to engage by mail since 2018, when Democrat Stacey Abrams narrowly lost her bid for governor to Republican Brian Kemp.
I'm a gospel-centered type of civic-minded person. I've always said that, but mine is actually rooted in the gospel, and that is the Gospel of Luke, where he says that Jesus, I've come to open up the prison to those that are bound. Jesus says, I've come to say to all of them that this is your time.
Honor agrees Christians are called to action, but differs on what that means.
Who's wanting to open up hospitals in rural communities, and who's wanting to close them? Right? Who's wanting to expand access to health care, and who's wanting to reduce it, right? Who's wanting to expand access to unemployment insurance during this time of pandemic, and who wants to foreclose on it?
He says all people of faith, even Christians, won't vote the same way, a point Reed acknowledges as well. But both are working hard to make sure believers get to the polls.
You got one more vote, that the job isn't done yet.
And I pray for us to continue to be found faithful.
Ralph Reed said the upcoming runoff election is not one of persuasion, but one of participation. In other words, whichever side gets more of its base to the polls will likely win. And no matter how you slice it, Christians make up a crucial part of the voting bloc. In Atlanta, Georgia, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Indeed they do. Thanks, Eric. Well, coming up, as some pursue a global movement to boycott Israel, Christian businesses are standing up for the Jewish state. We'll tell you all about it right after this.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
That could be the next step in this escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Robert Mueller chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
He's asking Christians to get the word out.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
Get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation. Weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
The Name of God, a new teaching from Gordon Robertson.
The name of the Lord is a strong tower.
Gain important insights into the protection available to you in the name of God. Discover how God is our healer, our provider, and the one who gives us peace. Plus, see exciting true stories of God's providence in the lives of real people.
You get the answer to everything, and that answer will never leave you.
The Name of God, available now.
Welcome back to Christian World News. Morocco is the latest country to agree to normalize diplomatic relations with Israel. The North African country becomes the fourth Arab nation in 4 months to make such a move. All this part of the Trump administration's Abraham Accords. The White House says the agreement will expand economic and cultural cooperation and advance stability in the region. Wendy?
Hundreds of Ethiopian Jews have finally made it to their biblical homeland. Israel recently airlifted these new immigrants as part of a special project. Emily Jones has that story and more from Jerusalem.
Welcome to Jerusalem for this Inside Israel report, where we show you what's happening in Israel and the Middle East. For years, the BDS movement has urged countries to boycott and divest from Israel, but a group of Christians are fighting back by doing the opposite and investing in Israel's economy. The Arise Summit held its annual conference in December. The organization connects Christian CEOs from around the world with innovative Israeli businesses they can invest in.
We thought instead of fighting the campaign to boycott, let's work on the positive level of connecting the millions of Christian business people around the world to the economy of Israel, people who are positively predisposed towards doing business in Israel.
Myers said people from over 47 countries have participated in the conference, and the partnerships made there will have an estimated $400 million economic impact over the next 10 years. Some 500 Ethiopian Jews recently touched down in Israel for the very first time. They received a warm welcome at Ben Gurion Airport, complete with a red carpet. Many waved the Israeli flag and others stopped to kiss the ground. Some of these families have waited years to finally make it to Israel.
My wife Sarah and myself were standing there with tears in our eyes when we saw the Olim, our brother Ethiopian Jews, disembark from the plane.
The arrival is a step towards the government carrying out its pledge to reunite hundreds of families split between Ethiopia and Israel. Activists estimate some 7,000 Ethiopian Jews remain behind in Ethiopia, waiting to come to Israel. Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem look a lot different this year as the world continues to fight the coronavirus pandemic. Missing are thousands of Christians who come to Jesus' birthplace every year to ring in the holiday season. This year, the famous Christmas tree lighting ceremony was limited to a small crowd.
This year is different because there is no spirit of the Christmas. You can't see anyone here. Every year there was almost like 5,000 people here, and today there is almost like 50 or 100.
Restaurants, souvenir shops, and hotels are closed to visitors. The Christmas Eve church service will also be closed to the public, but will be broadcast live. For more stories like this, you can watch our Jerusalem Dateline program at cbnnews.com. Back to you.
Wow, so beautiful there. Thanks, Emily. We're back with more Christian World News right after this.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Some trust in chariots,
Some trust in horses, but we will trust in the name of the Lord our God. CBN presents the name of God. Jehovah Shalom.
The Lord is our peace.
Jehovah Yireh.
The Lord will provide.
Jehovah Shammah.
The Lord is there.
Jehovah Rapha.
The Lord who heals.
Jehovah Sidkenu.
The Lord our righteousness.
You'll be encouraged by Gordon Robertson's teaching on the name of God.
God has given you the right to carry his name.
Plus, you'll see exciting true stories of God's providence in the lives of real people.
I could hear my house being shredded when I heard my wife screaming.
I knew something was seriously wrong with him, and it was worse than we had thought.
Become a CBN partner and get your copy of The Name of God. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com.
Welcome back. 12-year-old Rashna spends her days scavenging ponds for plants to eat. But after the pandemic shut down schools and businesses, her family ran out of food.
Yeah, with no work, no food, how could they possibly survive? That's when CBN's Orphans Promise stepped in to help.
Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the nation of Cambodia, 12-year-old Rashna, her mom and brothers and sisters have been forced to stay home.
I have not gone to school. I miss my school and my teacher.
Rashna's mom, Somarli, is a widow raising 4 children alone. The kids missing school has been hard, but now Somarli has also not had any income.
I don't know what to do. When the coronavirus hit, they closed down the place where I work. Since then, I can't find any jobs to do.
Sometimes we don't have food to eat. I am really concerned about that. We picked the plants from the pond for Mom to cook for us to eat, but after we ate it, we all got diarrhea for the whole day.
Then they ran out of food.
We did not have rice. I saw Mom cry. I hugged her and cried too. Mom borrowed food from the neighbor. We only ate one time per day for a whole week.
When CBN's Orphans Promise learned about Rashna and her family, we provided food packages for them and others hardest hit by the COVID shutdown.
There was rice, noodles, canned fish. I had never had food like this before. I was so excited when they gave us a wonderful gift.
Orphans Promise provided enough food for the family for a month and will continue to provide for them and other vulnerable families until they can return to work.
I am very thankful to the people who support Orphan Promise. Without you, we would have nothing to eat. Thank God that you helped my family.
Thank God for Orphans Promise.
Yeah, Operation Blessing, Orphans Promise, doing amazing job around the world as they do all the time. Well, folks, that is it for this week's edition of Christian World News.
Until next time, from all of us here, goodbye and God bless you.